Hi, welcome to my channel, Go So Beautiful. My name's Becky, and today I have a special video called, it's a challenge called hashtag 5 questions, 1 take. And it was I first saw it on Tomcat Stitchery, Whitney from Tomcat Stitchery. I saw her video and she mentioned that Lindsay from Inside the Hem, and she decided to host this challenge. So without further ado, here are 5 questions about my YouTube sewing channel and unedited. So hopefully it's not too rough. First question is, what has your sewing journey looked like? For instance, when did you start sewing? Who taught you? Any breaks, etc.? I have been sewing for most of my life. I grew up sewing. My mother made most of my clothes when I was growing up, and probably when I was in about the 3rd grade, I started learning how to use a sewing machine. And my mother became a 4-H leader, and we had a sewing club that we had in our house, I guess once a week, and that's where I learned to sew. The first project was a scarf and a tote bag, and from then on I just kept sewing. I made clothes for myself partly because we couldn't afford to shop at the mall where a lot of my friends did, but I really enjoyed sewing and just kept making clothes for myself as I grew up. And once I got into high school and I had my own job, I did, buy some store-bought clothes, but I still made most of my clothes. I made my senior prom dress. I even had really started making clothes for other people, although my mother did help me quite a bit with some of those things. And when I was in college, I continued sewing, although I did still buy some ready-to-wear things. And then after college, I was still sewing, and I had a job as a research assistant, but I also got a job in a fabric store, and just took my paycheck home in a shopping bag most of the time. But anyway, I continued sewing. I really didn't take too many breaks, I don't think, except for when I had my children, and that was, took a lot of extra time. And then I also started a business where I was making handbags, and I still had a lot of fabric that I had bought because I wanted to make my own clothes, but I just didn't have time. And I finally kind of gave up on that business because I got tired of doing craft shows and things. And while I love making handbags, I just felt like it was taking too much of my too much time. And I started I had to quit my job. I was working as a nurse, and I had to quit my job as a nurse because I had an injury. And then I started teaching sewing classes, and that was in right when COVID hit. And I tried to teach over Zoom, and that didn't work. And so one of my friends suggested, why don't you just make a video? And I said, okay. So I made a video and posted it on YouTube, and that's sort of how my YouTube channel got born. And I started watching other YouTube sewers, and I was like, why am I not making my own clothes? I've got all this fabric, and I know how to make my own clothes. So I started making more of my own clothes again. Second question is, describe your sewing space. I am very fortunate in that I have a very large room in the lower half of our house, lower level of our house, and I've got a video where I recently redecorated it, and most of the time it's kind of tidy, but there's always room for improvement. And so I try to keep things organized, and it's kind of a workroom too, because even though I don't really have a business, I do some custom projects for people, just because they ask me, and it kind of helps support my sewing habit, my fabric habit. Number 3, what is it like being a sewing YouTuber? Does it meet your expectations? Is it how you thought it would be? Reaction from others? To be honest, I've been really encouraged. It started off really slow, and I've probably had it for a couple years, and part of the problem was just making myself find time to film videos. And I guess a few months ago, Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room opened up, she invited other YouTubers to join her in the Friday Sews, hashtag Friday Sews videos. So I said, I finally took the plunge and did it, and then I started getting a lot more subscribers, and I found that it was really fun to make myself accountable to having a video once a week. And you can see from my videos that I don't always make it on Friday, but it's just encouraged me to meet other sewists in the comments. The subscribers that I have for my channel are very encouraging, and just have left some lovely words of encouragement to me. Also, I set out to, one of the things I wanted to do with my channel was to encourage people to sew, because I don't really know very many people who sew around me as much as I do. There's only really one other person, and she really has a business. She does sew for her family, I think, sometimes, but for the most part, she sews for a living, and she does costume work and alterations, and she makes beautiful pageant gowns. But nobody else that I know really sews for themselves. I have taught I have taught sewing lessons, and I'm continuing to do that, and I'm trying to kind of build that part of my sewing, whatever you call it. But I'm starting to feel a little bit like I just want to sew for myself. A few people have asked me if I would make something for them, some clothes, and I said I've just decided I don't really want to do that, because it's hard enough to get clothes to fit me, let alone try to fit somebody else. And I really do want to try to make as many of my clothes as I can. So in terms of what it's been like, I'm really enjoying it. I don't, like I said, my main focus is to encourage other sewists and do a little teaching along the way, because even as long as I've been sewing, I am still learning new things. Number 4, describe your most memorable project, a big event, a total fail, a biggest success. I had a hard time. There's been a lot of memorable projects. Probably the one that I am most proud of is when I was in college, or maybe high school, I went to a very preppy college, so it had to be college. And I wanted to make a wool kilt skirt. And I did find some really pretty 100% wool, and I found a skirt pattern that had pleats all the way around, and it was a wraparound skirt. Basically, it went all the way around, and then it had a button up at the waist, and then it had the fringe on the front, and I even purchased a pin, and I matched all of the plaids, and I wore that skirt until I gained too much and I couldn't wear it anymore. So that's probably one of my most favorite accomplishments. The biggest fail was when I was asked by a sort of a friend and acquaintance to make a balloon shade. And while I knew how to make curtains and I knew how to make balloon shades, I really did not have that much control of the project. She went and bought the fabric and did not really buy the appropriate fabric. And then when I tried to make it and then I wanted to hang it, she hung it, and it didn't do right. And she was really upset, and I told her I was really sorry and that I bought the fabric from her and didn't charge her anything. So that was a big fail and learning lesson for me, not to bite off more than I can chew, and to take control of the process of, not just letting somebody go and buy fabric that really doesn't know that much about sewing. Anyway, it turned out okay. And then I have a lot of other garments that I've made that I was really, I don't want to say proud of, but they came out really nice. And probably the most recent make that I was really pleased with was a dress I made last summer for my niece's wedding. I've mentioned it before, and I think I've showed pictures of it. And I got so many compliments on it. Even I got a compliment from the wedding photographer, and that just made me feel really good and gave me a lot of confidence in my sewing. And number 5, what is one quote, saying, piece of advice you've gotten that resonates with your sewing YouTube success? I think probably the thing that resonates is that this is a community of people who really have a passion for sewing and love to share things that they've made, along with their love for fabric and fiber art, and their love for their own bodies and making things fit properly. I'm still learning how to do that. In fact, I've decided to take a class on pants fitting, because that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm having problems with right now. I have taken classes on making your own patterns, and I took one class. It was a one-day seminar, and there were a lot of people there that sewed, and they had some funny stories about it, how you make something the night before, and and I did this once, you didn't quite have time to finish it, so you had to pin it together. Anyway, any advice that I have would be just to keep working on things, practice. If there's one thing I've learned most recently, is that it's okay to make it's okay to make a practice garment before you cut into expensive fabric. And I've learned some tough lessons that way too. That dress that I made for my niece's wedding, I did make a toile for that, and I'm so glad I did, because that fabric was pretty precious, and I didn't want to ruin it by making it the wrong size. Now, since then, I have gotten impatient and made a few things out of expensive fabric that didn't fit quite so well. And I think the reason I did that was because it looked like it was a loose fitting garment, and I thought, you know, it would be fine, but now I'm going to have to go back and fix it. So I guess the best piece of advice I would have is, you know, make a practice garment, especially if you're not sure how the pattern is going to fit. And one saying, this is kind of silly, but when I worked at the fabric store, we sold lots of other little sewing related items like coffee mugs, and I used to have a coffee mug that says, "She who dyes with the most fabric wins." Now, I don't know what happened to that mug, and I certainly am not going to try and be the one who has the most fabric, but I will say there's probably some other people out there who will beat me in terms of having the most fabric. Anyway, that's all for me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. This is me, Becky from Go So Beautiful, Uncut. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, and thanks for watching.